Joining us now is Scott Strazik, the CEO of GE Vernova, an energy technology company. Scott, it's good to see you, sir.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
I believe you're sold out through 28.
We're pretty full for the next 2 years, but we're ready to meet this moment. We're continuing to invest in more manufacturing capability in all of our factories in the U.S., and as there's more plants ready with pedestals that need the gas turbines, we'll deliver them.
OK, put some oxygen into that story. Let's talk about this. How quickly has demand just absolutely exploded over the last few years?
Yeah, and gas, when you think about coming into 2025, we had 46 gigawatts on contract to future deliveries. We're ending the year with about 80 gigawatts, so we almost doubled our backlog over the course of 12 months. We expect that to grow substantially in the next 12 months. So this is a time when the world is very clearly seeing that gas is really a force multiplier that's going to enable a lot of economic growth, but also a lot of their power generation sources that'll be built above and beyond gas power.
It seems like all energy sources are not equal in this current environment, at least not politically. On one hand, gas, yes. Maybe even nuclear. We are seeing some more enthusiasm around that.
Yeah.
Wind, no way. There seems to be a real sense that offshore wind turbines are personas non grata right now. Is that your sense as well? Is that kind of how you're arranging your portfolio?
Well, there's no question that our order book for wind is much softer than everything else in the portfolio, and it's a complicated policy environment. At the end of the day, we talk about applying the right technologies where the right resources exist. Where there's good wind and a lot of land, we should build wind farms in smart ways that can make economic sense. But that is the softest business that we have right now. To your point, nuclear is gaining a lot of momentum. We're having more excitement and commercial discussions on our 300 megawatt small modular reactor than ever in the past, including in Europe. They're seeing the build that's starting to happen in North America, and I would expect for that to follow here. So probably in no administration is all technology sources treated equally. I wouldn't say that all technologies were treated equally during the Biden administration either. So you have to kind of take that step back and then just with every administration, serve them. And that's what we're doing.
How has your client mix changed? Because traditionally it's been utilities more than anything.
You bet.
And increasingly, as John was mentioning in the intro, it really is directly the AI companies and the hyperscalers themselves. How much is that changed the composition of your clients in the business?
Drastically. In 2024, our order book had very little negligible hyperscaler orders. In 2025, it was about 10% of our order book. In 2026, it very well may be 25% of our order book. So the growth is real. The reality is these are good companies take what puts their business model at risk and gains control over that. The reality is these companies need the electrons along with the data and the chip, and they're securing a lot of the long lead equipment they need to ensure that the electrons will be there when they need them.
Scott, I'm glad you mentioned the Biden administration because they did choose winners and losers in the energy space as well. We saw subsidies for EVs that we don't have anymore, and this administration squarely focused on oil. The president wants $50 a barrel. How do you plan for the long term if we have elections and we have another one in 2028?
The good news is that the world is going to need a lot more electrons for a really long time. And in the end, over the long term, they're going to need a diverse set of technologies. So we continue to invest in all these technologies.
Nuclear, though, what's so interesting is that I have heard optimism, Democrats and Republicans, about nuclear, but they really haven't been able to sell it yet to the public. How is that going?
Well, I think we're on the mantle of kind of making progress there. I think that we'll make progress in 2026. I think as people start to see it shift from talking about it to building it, I think sentiment's going to shift in a very material way.
Can that happen before, say, a midterm election?
Well, I don't know if that's not my role to figure out, what really moves the needle with elections. I'm just building power plants and serving the world with incremental electrons right now. But that we can do. And we're going to get a lot more stuff in construction quickly that I think is motivating for everybody involved.
That's the right answer, and I'm sure PR's happy with that. I just want to cut in because we're getting an update about the president's schedule and a bit of a sneak peek about what we might hear from the president in his address later on this afternoon. So according to an administration official, the president's speech later could touch on Venezuela and Greenland. Also, the president has about 5 bilats with European leaders in Davos, Switzerland at the World Economic Forum over the next few days or so. So that's a pretty packed schedule for the president.
Pretty packed schedule. I'm really not surprised he's going to talk about Greenland because that has been the topic du jour here at Davos. And Venezuela, can you imagine? It was just 2.5 weeks ago that the United States went into Caracas and captured Nicolas Maduro. Who are those 5 bilateral meetings with, though. That is going to be key because for the Europeans, what is going on with Greenland and this potential tariff threat on top of it has been existential for them. And they can't see through doing anything else in terms of deals with the United States because of it. Mark Carney yesterday, you brought him up. Oof. He said middle countries, if you're not at the table, prepare to be eaten. You're on the menu.
Hey, Scott, I'm not going to ask you about what's on the menu or Greenland, but I will ask you this. The world feels like, particularly sitting here, like it's becoming more polarised. For companies that have international ambitions, does that get a little bit more complex, a little bit more difficult?
Well, I think we need to build a more resilient business model. And to build a more resilient business model, you need to invest in local supply chains to serve local markets, and we're definitely having to do that. But at the end of the day, the demand is very healthy, and our relationships are very strong, and we're very confident investing into these markets. But we do have to assume a more polarized world, and because of that, more local manufacturing capability to serve local markets.
And it becomes more competitive, especially with other countries also trying to build out their power grids. And I just wonder how you toggle between the expense of the inputs that's going up, the incredible demand by hyperscalers that have endless cash, and the average consumer that funds the utilities that doesn't. How do you face that off and limit costs in a conscious way?
I would actually say over the medium to long term, the fact that those complexities exist with all of that growth, this is our moment to ultimately create more cost competitive products because we have more volume. We can invest in our business and our factories in different ways to automate that in the end will bring costs down. So in the early stages of a growth cycle, we're having to make investments in our factories. Medium term, we're gonna win this battle, including the affordability challenge.
There's a question, and just to build on the idea that John was raising about how the world's becoming more complicated.
Yeah.
Does it raise an issue for you as a U.S.-based company that people maybe are a little more skeptical of buying from you if they're from another country, and there are these tit-for-tats going on between the leaders? Is that something that comes up?
We're a very proud U.S. company that's committed to serving our international customers, and I think they understand that, and they see that in our actions every day and the investments that we make every day. And to date, no, we have not experienced that in the end markets. It doesn't mean that every day we don't wake up and know we need to earn it. We need to earn it every day in the U.S. too, right? And that's exactly what we intend to do.